Well, hello, class number 3. We're going to be headed into Bible. So we are on number 10, this guy right here. So it's chart. We're actually going to be starting to study a little bit about the disciples. What kind of men were they? How did they react? What did they do? We're going to look into the scriptures and see exactly what they did so that we can get a better idea of who did Jesus really call to be his disciples, these first 12. What were they like? What kind of reactions did they have? And I actually need to get something real quick. I always forget my Bible because most of the time I use my phone as my Bible. But when I'm recording on my phone, I can't use it as my Bible at the same time. All right. So pull out your paper. We're going to look first at Peter. Peter was an amazing man, but was also very human. He had some very human, shall we say, reactions to things. At one point, Jesus actually told him, "Get behind me, Satan." So I like Peter a lot. He's a good guy. Now, first one we're going to look up is out of Matthew 4:18 through 20. So go to chapter 4 of Matthew. As you can see, the list of the scriptures we're going to do is right here. And then beside him, we're going to just say, what does that show about him? So if you want to pause real quick and you want to go ahead and write these down, you can do that. But I'm going to keep going. So Matthew 4:18. That's 1, not 4. 4:18. It says, 18 through 20. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw two brothers, Simon, called Peter, and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, and they were just fishing. It says, "Come follow me," Jesus said, "and I will send you out to fish for people." At once they left their nets and followed him. So what does that tell us about Peter? How did he react to that? What does it say about him? What do y'all think? I believe it talks to us about, number one, he was called. And how did he react? Did he think about it? Did he sit down? Did he say, I wonder if I should do this or not? No, he actually put his nets down. It says he dropped his nets immediately. It says, at once they left their nets and followed him. They left everything. So right here we can say, he, let's say, followed I think we're going to have to extend this. Immediately. He followed immediately. He didn't pause. He didn't hesitate. It's like as soon as he was up, as soon as Jesus said, "Follow me," he said, "All right, I'm gone." Now let's look at Matthew 16. Let's skip a few chapters. We're going to see somewhere else where Peter comes up. 16:21. It says, "From that time on, Jesus began to explain to his disciples he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things at the hands of the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, on the third day be raised to life." He was explaining these things to his disciples. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. "Never, Lord," he said, "this shall never happen to you." Who's wiser or knows more, Jesus or Peter? Yeah, Jesus does. Jesus turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You're a stumbling block to me, and you do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." I don't know about you, but it would be kind of disconcerting for Jesus to call me Satan. Not too good. So in this instance, we see Peter actually getting rebuked because he is going against what Jesus is saying is God's plan. So we have to remember that God's plan is not always easy. Oftentimes it requires discomfort and can require pain and suffering. And we see that a lot in the first century church. We don't experience much here and now because of the fact we live in a nation that has a lot of freedoms and liberties, but at that time they didn't. And at that time there was great suffering. But we see that, we're going to say here, he was rebuked. So, he was rebuked. Now, let's keep going. So, basically, Jesus told him, no, not exactly. Let's go to Matthew 18, so not too much further, verses 21 and 22. Let's see. It says, then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? Jesus answered, I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times in a day. How often? So the Jews basically said you forgive someone up to 7 times in a day, and Jesus was like, no, it's a lot more than that. And basically, Jesus was explaining to him, you keep forgiving, you don't stop. But the good thing about Peter here is that he's asking. He wants to know. He's asking questions. So let's put that down. The Peter also, he asked questions. He wanted to know. He wanted to find out. All right, so let's actually go on now to John. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John 1:41. Let's see what that one pulls up. John, too far back. John 1:41 and 42. It says, the first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, we have found the Messiah, that is the Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. Jesus looked at him and said, you are Simon, son of John. You will be called Cephas, which, when translated, is Peter, or rock. So here we actually see Simon get his name changed. Imagine you going to Jesus and Jesus saying, you were called Simon, but you're going to be called something else. And it has to do with the purpose and the call that I have for you. So he changed his name. So right here, we'll put name changed. It's pretty great because of the fact that it is prophetic in the fact that he said, this is what I'm going to be having you do. So I'm going to change your name. It's not going to be Simon anymore. It's going to be called Peter, or rock, or Petros in the Greek. Let's go to John 2:15. If you need to pause to find the verse, that's not a problem. So John 2:15. Where does it say? It says, so he made a whip of... Is that right? No. 21:15. Oops. Not 2:15, 21:15. 21:15. It says, when they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. So Jesus restored him. This was after Peter had denied Christ 3 times, and then Christ was crucified, and then he was risen, and they were on the shore, and Jesus had cooked him a fish breakfast, and they were talking, and Jesus asked Peter, do you love me more than any of these? And Peter replied, yes, I do. And Jesus began to restore him because Peter felt very guilty and down because he had denied Jesus 3 times. And then Jesus had died for him. And now Peter was like, wow, yes, I do love you. And so Jesus began to restore who he was in his calling. And so let's put right here, he was restored. Now let's look at Luke 5 through 11. Matthew, Mark, Luke, Luke 5. You can begin to see what kind of man Peter was and what kind of man he became. All right, so Luke 5 through 11, it says this. Simon answered, Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything, but because you say so, I will let down the nets. When they had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, Go away from me, Lord, I am a sinful man. For he and all his companions were astonished at the catch of fish they had taken. And so were James and John, the sons of Zebedee, Simon's partners. So James and John were his cousins. Then Jesus said to Simon, Don't be afraid. From now on you will fish for people, or men. So they pulled their boats up on shore, left everything, and followed him. Again, we see 2 instances where Peter was told to do something, and he did it. He obeyed. So even though sometimes Peter said crazy things or did things that were out of time or out of season, one very strong thing we learn from Peter is he was obedient. So this is what we learn about Peter. So he followed immediately, so he's obedient. He said some things that weren't quite right, and Jesus rebuked him, but he took the rebuke well, and he was corrected. He asked questions. His name was changed, and he was restored. That even though he got down on himself because he denied Jesus, Jesus still came to him and restored him. And then we see just great faith and trust and obedience in Peter. But now we're going to look at his cousin Andrew. We just have a couple of verses for Andrew. So let's go to Matthew 4:18. These are the Gospels. Our Gospels are the good news or the life of Christ. 4:18. It says, As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, he saw 2 brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew. They were casting a net into the lake, for they were fishermen. Let's see. It's just 4:18 through 20. And then it says, At once, it said, Come, follow me, Jesus said, and I will send you out to fish for people. At once they left their nets and followed him. So again, Andrew is also, he followed immediately. He didn't wait. He didn't hesitate. But he followed Jesus immediately when he heard his voice and he heard his call. Now let's go to John 1:40. John 1:40 says this, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard what John had said and who had followed Jesus. It says, the first thing Andrew did was to find his brother Simon and tell him, We have found the Messiah, that is the Christ. Oh, wait, so Peter and Andrew are brothers, not cousins. I don't know how I got that. So the first thing Andrew did was find his brother Simon and tell him, We have found the Messiah, that is Christ. And he brought him to Jesus. So we can also see that Andrew believed immediately. It didn't take any convincing of him to know that he believed immediately. So you can go ahead and write that down. He believed immediately. And then lastly, we're going to look at John 6, 8, and 9. John 6, 8, and 9. And it says, another one of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. Here is a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish, but how far will they go among so many? So here we see actually an area where Andrew, even though he had great faith, he doubted somewhat. And so we're going to put down here, he doubted. You know, even though he was Jesus, Andrew looked at him and said, we've got like 15,000 people. How are we going to feed people with all the people with just a boy's meal? And Jesus kind of said, watch and see. But here we see Andrew doubted. But even though he may have doubted, did Jesus rebuke him or tell him to leave or go? No, he didn't. He just helped him to become part of the miracle. So that's going to be it for today. We're going to continue looking at more of the disciples' lives and how Scripture reveals to us what kind of men they were. So again, Andrew, we see he followed him immediately. He believed immediately. So he had great faith, but at the same time, there were times when he also doubted. But Jesus didn't reject him for that, and he didn't send him off for that. He just continued to teach him and continued to love him and bring him along. So think about that, consider that, and have a good day.